Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today it's actually very recently been in the news. It's a case that I've wanted to do for a while, but I was kind of holding off on just to see what comes of it, because I don't know, I just feel sometimes it feels better to do a case that is solved in a sense, so people can get that peace of mind that the person who did these horrible things, you know, has been caught for it. And it seems like this one may have been. It is the case surrounding the death of Alexis Sharkey. Alexis Sharkey was born on the 4th of November in 1994 to parents Stacey Clark Robinall and Michael Robinall. Obviously, she was initially born a Robinall, but then you'll find out later how she got the name Sharkey. That is how she is more commonly known as. That is her married name. So she was born in Texas in the US. She also had two younger sisters. Alexis was very, very close to her family, especially her parents. You know, they had a really tight-knit relationship and they adored each other. Her family were Christian, and, you know, Alexis growing up was such a lovely, fun-loving girl. From a very young age, she became passionate about the world of modelling and fashion and things like that. She went to Youngsville High School, and after that she started to work with various different modelling agencies. She was really fun-loving, outgoing, and just had such a great personality. She was also very intelligent. She spent 6 years in college, and she graduated the University of Pittsburgh with a bachelor's degree in biology. Alexis then further enrolled herself at St. Bonaventure University for higher education. As you can see, she was very smart, but she also worked really hard as well. And she enjoyed life too. She did cheerleading, she ran track, and she just lived her life to the fullest. She had plans of going to medical school when she finished everything, but after she sort of graduated, she actually decided to take a year off. And this is when she moved to Odessa in Texas and began working at Twin Peaks. She made quite a decent amount of money here, and she had tons of friends. Throughout this case, you'll find out that no matter where Alexis found herself, she just always made friends so easily. She was just such a lovable person. Her friends and family would also call her Lexi as a nickname. So Alexis really had sort of aspirations to move up to the south because it was a lot warmer there. She enjoyed doing boating and things like that. She was very outdoorsy and loved traveling and just all of that things she absolutely loved. And so the south would have brought sort of warmer weather so that she could go out boating a lot more, and that was her aspiration. That is what she wanted to do. While she was working at Twin Peaks, one of her friends actually introduced her to a guy called Thomas Sharkey. Now, he was 49 years old at the time, and Alexis was in her younger 20s, and he was divorced, he had children, and obviously he was about 23-ish years older than her, which of course, if you love someone, age doesn't matter. I'm not saying that it does, each to their own. And they hit it off straight away, and Alexis and Tom really liked each other. Tom was a bodybuilder and an entrepreneur, and he would often travel around internationally for his work. Alexis then got a job working in an MLM called Monet, and from that she was very, very successful. She did really well. She earned some good money and made a ton of friends through that as well. Through Monet, though, she could sort of live out her dreams of traveling. She loved to travel, and that allowed her to work and travel at the same time. And so she began building up that empire, as well as posting pictures of her life on Instagram and things like that. And she began building up her social media presence as well, and eventually would be known as an influencer. She was like an Instagram model, you know, she got quite a few followers through it, and she just kind of began building up that. She also created a YouTube channel too, and uploaded a video of her and Tom's travels onto that channel. In June of 2019, Tom and Alexis got engaged. And then, not long after, in December of that same year, they went ahead and got married in a courthouse. Now, there's a lot of speculation around this as to why this was chosen for Alexis, because why Alexis chose to do this, because she had a ton of friends. She loved doing photo shoots and things like that. So you would have thought that she would have wanted this big fancy wedding anyway. Not that there's anything wrong with a courthouse wedding, because of course there isn't. That is what they decided to do, and that is what they went ahead with. In January of 2020, the now married couple moved to Houston, Texas. And her sort of social media presence as like an influencer was gaining traction too. She had about 20,000 followers, I believe, at the time of her death. So her influence status was increasing, and she was doing so well with Monet. I mean, she was making quite a lot of money by all accounts. When she moved to this new area, she obviously wanted to make some more new friends. I mean, she was fantastic at that anyway. So she went on this app that's apparently called Bumble BFF or something like that. I've never heard of this, but it's an app where you can go on to make friends. And she ended up talking to this girl called Tanya, and they became friends from that. They decided to meet up, and Tanya also brought like a bigger group of friends with her, and then Alexis got integrated into this big group of girls. And within 2 weeks of moving there, Alexis had like a massive friend group already. At this point, Alexis has spent pretty much a lot of 2019 and 2020 traveling. And obviously she posted a ton of pictures of that on Instagram and things like that. So she goes on a trip in November with her friend Lauren, and this is when her friend said that Alexis confided something in her. It was something that nobody had really heard before, and this is just what she said Alexis said, but going through the case and finding out what happens later on, it was most likely true. And it was that Tom was being very physical with her, and often he would choke her, and she would like wake up on the floor. He'd have choked her that much that it sort of knocked her unconscious, and then she came around on the floor. So basically that there was a lot of domestic abuse going on, and it was something that her mother would later say that she had not heard of. Now, a lot of people don't tell people that kind of thing. A lot of people think they can deal with it or whatever. She confided in her friends, and she might not have wanted to tell her parents yet. I mean, she literally just told her friends. So it's hard. These things are so difficult. And so, you know, she'd gathered enough courage to tell her friends, and that isn't where it stopped. Over time, she opened up more and more, and her friends were getting really worried about her. And that is when she started talking about leaving Tom and getting a divorce. And then we get to Thanksgiving. And now we get to the day before Thanksgiving. Apparently Tom was spending a lot of time like not at the house that they shared together. He was staying away a lot and things like that. So it seemed like there was a breakdown in their relationship. The day before Thanksgiving, Alexis spent a lot of time talking to her mother, and they made plans about getting together over Christmas time. They hadn't actually seen each other for a year at this point because, you know, with 2020, COVID hitting and everything going crazy, the world literally flipping on its head, people hadn't actually seen their families for a long time. But it seems like maybe it was more on Stacey's side because obviously Alexis was traveling the world and things, and I don't know, maybe because of that she didn't want to go and see her mother because of COVID. I don't know. But Alexis was out there traveling around and, you know, because of COVID concerns, didn't actually go to see her family. They had originally apparently planned to see each other over Thanksgiving, but again, because of all the COVID things, they didn't end up doing it. And instead, she ended up spending Thanksgiving with her friend Tanya. And this is one of the actual last photos that was taken, that is believed to be taken of Alexis alive. So Alexis spent it with Tanya, and then Alexis goes home. She's speaking to Tanya and chatting away, and then the day after Thanksgiving, sort of later on that night, is when she stopped posting on social media and speaking to her friends and just went dark. Now, before that, her and Tanya and her other friends had been chatting away. They had actually made plans to spend the Saturday together as like a girls' night. They were going to have a film and whatever else. And I believe the last time that she actually heard of Alexis was 6 p.m. that day. And then again, she went dark. Now, Tanya tried to message her on the Saturday. Obviously they'd made plans and she didn't get a response. Immediately she was worried. That is not like Alexis at all. She was a social media queen. She was always on Instagram, always on everything like that. She always had a phone. A phone was a lifeline, and it was something she kept with her at all times. She was never unreachable. So why was she now unreachable? She got really, really worried straight away, and so she decides to drive down and knock on her door. She does, so knocks on, receives no response. She sits in the car for a while trying to contact all these different people to see if anyone knows where Alexis is. And now around this time you've got Tom, who's claiming that she left after them having a row. She jumped over the fence and she ended up jumping into this car and off she went. He was trying to text people to try and find out exactly where she was and to see if anyone knew anything. Apparently on that same Saturday, Tom did call Alexis's mother and told her that he had not seen Alexis since the Friday night and that all of her friends and family were all out looking for her. Stacey reported her daughter as missing and put this post on Facebook too. On the 28th of November in 2020, a garbage truck driver was driving along the road, just doing his job, and then he sees something chilling on the side of the road. He sees what looked like a pair of feet hanging out from some brush. So he pulls over, he rings his supervisor in a panic because he does not know if this is a mannequin, which he's hoping it is, or an actual dead body. And so he's just all over the place, he can't bring himself to look, and so he rings his supervisor and asks him to come out and have a look. And when they do, they realise that they have found the naked body of a young woman. And this is when they obviously called the police. This woman had no visible signs of injury, there was no blood or anything there. She was very clean, and obviously she was not clothed. So the police come, they take this body away and they take it in for obviously processing to try and find out who she is. At that time there had been no reports of a missing person. Tom was texting his friends to try and find where Alexis was, and so Alexis hadn't actually been reported missing at that point, and so they couldn't identify this body. Now, something very strange surrounding this case. I mean, obviously it makes more sense now that we know what we know, but at the time it confused a lot of people because this body had been brought in and nobody knew who she was. So they're trying to identify, she had no ID on, no nothing, it didn't match any missing person's description at the time. Well, the next day, Sunday, Tom goes in there and he views this body without anyone having contacted him, I believe, and he just basically says, yes, that's my wife, that's Alexis. And at that point, her family were all still out looking for her and her friends were all still out looking for her. Apparently, he had seen a news report that a woman was found dead, and he just went down after seeing this report, apparently. After Alexis's body was found, her mother made this devastating Facebook post. And a lot of things came out surrounding her and Tom's relationship to say that it wasn't great, that he was abusive, that Alexis was looking for a divorce and wanted to split up with him. But again, Alexis wasn't there to say it herself, and so this is what her friends and everyone were saying that she had said to them. Thomas, of course, denied everything. He said that they were getting along just fine, he didn't abuse her, they actually weren't getting a divorce, and that there were just no problems in their relationship. Her mother also, as I've already said, wasn't aware of any problems in their relationship, but again, you don't always share those things with anyone sometimes. So, there was a lot of speculation around this case. There was a lot of, it took a long time for the coroner's report to come out. People were waiting to find out what her cause of death was. And then on the 19th of January in 2021, it actually finally came out that her cause of death was strangulation. Her body had been left just 3 miles away from her apartment, and it was speculated that she had actually died either late on the Friday night or early hours on that Saturday. But the full details of the autopsy hadn't been released. And for a long time, the investigation was very, very long. The police were looking into every avenue. They have ruled out suspects, and that was all we heard for a long time. Obviously the police were doing that in the background, we didn't hear of any of it until a few days ago. Eventually The evidence had all built up and all pointed towards Tom as murdering his wife. The police came to the conclusion that he was the only one with the means and the motive to be able to commit this murder. They had ruled out numerous suspects over the months of this long investigation, and it just left him. He was still there. There was the history of domestic violence, you know, and that their relationship was ending in divorce, even though he refuted that. He said that that wasn't the case. But they looked into numerous sources and basically found out that that was the case. Now, what I neglected to mention, actually, within like 2 weeks of Alexis's murder occurring, Tom moved away. He got out of that. He got out there and he was gone. He moved. And the police found him after that being very evasive. Like, they wanted a DNA sample off him because I'm guessing they, like I said, they don't release a lot of the information in the case because they want to get a conviction, and they didn't release this, but apparently they must have found some DNA there because they wanted a DNA sample off of him. Now, he had moved away at this point. I believe he lived in Georgia. He agreed and he was going to give him this sample, and so they arranged to meet in Georgia to get the sample off him, and then he was a no-show. And then not long after that, he moved to Florida. And he was just very evasive and didn't ever want to speak to the police. Because of this, they got an arrest warrant on the 29th of September in 2021. So literally like just over a week ago. And they did it in secret, essentially, like very, very quietly, because he was well known for running and being very evasive, and they didn't want to let him know that they were kind of arresting him under the suspicion of the murder of his wife. And so the plan was, once they had actually arrested him, they were going to formally charge him with Alexis Sharkey's murder. And then it would obviously go to trial and things like that. So they set about trying to find him. Again, he was very evasive and wouldn't ever speak to the police. So they got a task force together. They managed to locate him in Fort Myers in Florida, and he was staying with a relative. On the 5th of October, about 10 p.m, they contact to make sure that he is there, and he is. They turn up at the door, and Tom, finally realizing that they were there to arrest him, essentially, he runs upstairs and avoiding the police again. Now, they know that there are firearms in that house, and so they try to talk him down and try to get him to come downstairs. And then, not long after, they realised that he had actually taken his own life with a gun. So basically, he saw the police were there for him, he ran upstairs, and he killed himself. The police have revealed that no one else is under suspicion of this case, and that they have clear evidence that Thomas was the one that murdered Alexis, and that he acted alone. So at this point, obviously, they're still waiting. They now have his DNA, and so they can look into that and compare it to the analysis that they wanted to do, which he just refused to give them. They do now have that, so they can finally get that and compare it. And there's probably going to be a bit more information out, maybe a full-on definite clarification that he actually did this. But at this moment in time, he has taken his life. All the evidence points to him. The police were going to arrest him on a murder because of all the evidence they had. So in the police's eyes, this case is basically solved with Tom's death, with the death of the defendant. And obviously it's just a devastating case all round. You know, Alexis was so young and she was taken, her parents had to bury their child, and that is so sad. And then you've got Tom's side of the family. He had kids, and you know, all of his family members probably thought that he didn't do it, and then it turns out that most likely he did. And then he takes his life. It's just all around, for all the families involved, it is devastating. This case has just been so tragic. Also, Stacey, when they found Alexis's body, Stacey tried to get her body returned home because she wanted to bury her. Now, Tom didn't really make it easy on himself. There was a lot of suspicion around him anyway, but then doing this just made it even worse. So he was her next of kin because they were married and it was no longer her mother, and he wouldn't release her body. Like, she wanted to bring her daughter home to bury her at home, and he just left her in the morgue and did nothing. Her mother had to fight for 2 whole weeks to try and get her daughter's body home, and she thought that she would just never see her again. In the end, she ended up having to change the next of kin to be able to do so. He did nothing. He didn't help. he just left her there and did absolutely nothing. Like, you can understand if he's absolutely devastated that his wife's gone and he wants to bury her where they live so that he can visit her. Completely understandable, but that wasn't the case. He just left her there and did nothing. And so her mom had to fight to bring her daughter home. So that just looked like even more suspicion on him as well. So he didn't really help himself there. But yeah, this case has obviously been in the news very recently. I actually couldn't believe it. I've looked into it before. I always meant to do it. But I don't know. He just, rather than facing justice for what he did, taking a life, he then ended his own. It was like he was waiting to see whether he would get caught, and then once he realised that he just took his own life. And again, my heart just truly goes out to both families involved. It's so sad what happened. You know what, they're grieving the loss of Tom and the fact that he actually did this too. And then you've got obviously Alexis' family. They've got the clarity now that they know that Tom did it, but you know, they're still obviously devastated by the whole that Alexis left in their family. They were all very close and it's just so sad. But yeah, that's the end of the case. If you guys have enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Alexis Sharkey. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.